Welcome to the Bonsai Time Podcast, the tree hugger's #1 spot for history, horticulture, and having fun. In this episode, we're diving into the horticultural hows and whys of wiring branches to shape our bonsai. This recording you're about to hear is from a talk that Rob Hoffman of Yume-en Bonsai gave to our Columbus Bonsai Society several years ago. Rob is an inspiration and an amazing resource for our local club here, and you can find him among the 7 workshops at our CBS annual show this weekend, July 19th through 20th, 2025. You can also find me there. And you can also find Rob at many regional bonsai shows in the Midwest and East Coast, including at the upcoming US National Exhibit, which will be this September. But before we dive into Rob's talk, your Bonsai Time team wanted to share what's been going on with us. Kevin has been a traveling bonsai vagabond, in his words, around the country helping at various bonsai nurseries this summer. He will be landing, though, at a new permanent location this fall that I'm sure he'll tell us all about later. Kelly lately has been struggling to keep bonsai properly watered in the warmer weather out in Southern California. Meanwhile, she's also been attending as many bonsai club meetings and workshops as possible, and taking lessons from Mr. Che, who she has also helped to launch his own YouTube channel called The Man Behind the Penjing. Meanwhile, for Ryan, aka me, this summer I've been busy downsizing my bonsai collection by selling at several local shows and helping to sell leftovers also from Kevin's collection from when he moved, his pots, his trees, his tools. So some of these can still be seen in my Etsy store and my website, but I always have more inventory I should add if I can find the time. But all of that downsizing is for a good cause, because I'm putting a lot more time in at the research lab this summer to hopefully get closer to finishing my PhD. So that's why we're recycling a little bit of content here from my past projects. So for this month, it'll be the Rob wiring talk that was previously published by me on the Columbus Bonsai Society YouTube channel several years back. And then we'll probably have something similar for August. And then in September, we'll probably get into new content again, just depending how our schedules permit. So anyways, if you did not fast forward through all that, hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about what we're up to rather than just diving into the content. But whatever, I will stop blabbing on and let you hear about wiring from Rob Hoffman now.
Anybody? How many has tried to wire and was scared about it? There we go. So wiring is a skill. It's not something that you can learn at one workshop and go, oh, now I can wire. You have to practice at it. You have to, it's not something that's going to come to you. There's people say there's no rules in bonsai, but there's rules. There's things that you have to do to make your tree function and be aesthetically pleasing. It's not, you just can't throw it to the wind and wish for the best. Wire is, I thought you were asking a question. Wiring is, I like the analogy, a painter uses a paintbrush to do his art. We use wire as our tool to make our art. You could do the clip and grow method, but you're going to wait 30, 40 years to have a nice tree. It's just kind of how it goes. Wiring is a skill that needs to be learned to do bonsai well. A lot of people are scared of it because it is something that's tedious. It does take a lot of time, but the more you try it, and the more you practice at it, the better you're going to be. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't like to wire, or I don't wire, you don't need to wire. Well, that's somewhat true, but usually the reason why people don't like to wire is because they're not good at it. If you're not good at something, normally you're not going to like it, you know? So wiring is very, very important. I just had a couple workshops at my place on how to wire. I'm not going to go near into depth like I did there, but wiring is something that's very technical to do well. The main thing with wiring is it has to work. You know, it has to be functional. But at the same time, you don't want to have your tree and then have like big clumps of wire all over it and then it look ugly. You want to try to make it look as aesthetically pleasing as you can when you're wiring it. So some of the rules about wiring, one is all your wire has to be at the same angle, okay? So when you guys are wiring, all that wire should be at the same angle all along that tree.
I guess I lost the blue.
So right here.
All right, so you want to keep that wire, here's your branch. You want to keep that wire the same angle. And when I say the same angle, there's a number that we want to keep that at. And this is debatable. A lot of people say it has to be 45 degrees. A lot of people say it has to be 70 degrees. So I'm going to kind of split that in the middle and say you want to go between 60 and 65 degrees. And the reasoning for that is 45 degrees is so tight, you're going to be using a lot more wire, okay? So if you use a little less wire on this tree, the main thing you got to do is come back to the function of it. You got to make sure that your wire is thick enough to be able to bend that branch. So you find your wire, you keep it the same angle as you're wiring down through there. That's one of the rules. The second rule, to make it functional and aesthetically pleasing, is to make sure you have the same spacing. So you don't want to have a branch on here, and this is going to be a little drastic, but you don't want to have it short and then long and then short. And, you know what I'm saying? Like that, what looks better? Top, right? So you guys want to make sure that those two things are in play when you're wiring your tree. And it'll make it look good when you're wiring. The other thing, which is a lot harder to do when you're wiring, is you don't want to have any gaps. When I say no gaps, what I mean is when you're wiring, you want your wire to be touching your tree 360 degrees all the way around that when you're wiring it around, okay? Because if that wire is not touching your tree, if you go to bend there, there's nothing to hold that in place. You're going to have a good chance of breaking that branch in that spot. So you want your wire to be touching your tree the whole way as you wire. And does anybody play instruments? Anybody play guitar or flute or trombone, anything? So as you know, one person's you're gonna hold the guitar, or you're gonna strum with one hand. This other hand over here, your offhand, is gonna be holding the neck of that guitar. That's your offhand. If you're left or right-handed, your offhand is super, super important. So you're gonna be holding your wire on that branch as you're wiring. Each rotation, you're gonna move your hand down. So you always want to have your fingers pressing that wire into your branch. Does that make sense to everybody? Does everybody get that? Because if you don't, one, if you're just going like this willy-nilly and not touching anything, you're going to have that second picture. You're going to have that wire so it's not even. You're going to have that wire where you're going to have gaps. That helps you place that wire where you want it to be. And just a little test here. These wires are pretty similar in diameter. They're not perfectly the same, but I just want to show everybody the difference. So most people, is anybody wired with copper wire? Is anybody wired with aluminum? Which do you guys prefer? Why is that?
More malleable.
Easier to do, right? So the reason that wire is used is because wire hardens, right? So the more you bend that wire, the harder it gets. So this is a 6 gauge. 6 gauge is pretty heavy wire. A lot of people have trouble wiring with 6 gauge wire. So when you use this, the more you bend it, the harder it gets. It's called work hardening. It's kind of what the molecule's doing it. But what you want to do is if you're using copper wire, you want to place it on there in one time. If you try to do it more than once, you might as well just throw that wire away and redo it again, because it's going to be too hard to put on there, and you're going to end up breaking branches, hurting your tree, hurting yourself. I mean, it's heavy duty wire. So I'm going to pass this around to show you guys kind of the difference. You can bend it a little bit. This side's been bent, this side is not, but it's see how it looks. So with that in mind, with one wire, the copper wire being harder, the smaller the gauge, the more the bigger the gauge, the more it'll hold, right? But with copper compared to aluminum, you can use a lot smaller of a gauge to hold your tree compared to what aluminum is doing. And on the whole, when you guys are wiring, most of the time, the rule of thumb is if you're wiring evergreens, such as pines or junipers, you want to use copper wire. And the reason for that is, one, normally in pines and juniper, you're going to make a lot heavier bends and make it a lot more pronounced. So having that extra holding power is really important. With aluminum, it's a little bit softer. So like if you wire a maple or a beech or something that has really smooth bark, it might not mess up that bark as much. So that's one way to go, is you want to kind of keep in your mind deciduous is aluminum wire, evergreens is copper wire. Any questions about that so far? Kevin?
Could you make?
With the copper on the soft part, have you ever applied like a wrap around the wire itself?
You can. You can take paper or paper towel and cut it into like 1-inch strips, and then wrap the paper on the copper wire itself.
Or tape.
Or tape. You can use like electrical tape or like health tape, medical tape. Those work as well. But I would say before you go that route, it's kind of difficult already I would say practice your wiring before you start adding all kinds of stuff to you. Start with the basics, Don't go crazy and try to do all kinds of other stuff before you even learn how to walk, So we got our 3 kind of rules for learning how to wire. Does anybody have any questions so far about any of this? Or are you guys got it okay? But it's a hard subject. Kev?
How long did it take you to get proficient at wiring?
I'm still not proficient. I can wire well, but I'm nowhere near mastering anything. I teach classes, but I know the rules and I can wire well, but I'm never going to say I'm a master at anything. It takes years and years and years.
Just to kind of mention on something that you talked about earlier, because this is a different school of thought on that, and I guess a lot of it would be just what works for whoever's doing it. When you were talking about before when you wrap it, you have to make sure that there are no gaps. One of the things that I was taught was that if you do leave a little bit of a gap, if you're planning on twisting it, because you can't twist the branch if you don't have any place for the wire to go.
Right.
Because it's going to get tighter when you bend it and so forth. So
yeah.
I think a lot of it just depends on again, your material and what you're planning on doing with it.
Again, like you gotta always come back to like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, what is your goal in this tree? Because there's different scenarios where, things are gonna, some things will work and some things won't. But it's hard to say when you're first starting off what's gonna happen because you don't know the difference between what's good and what's not, right? So you kind of have to have a little bit of experience to know that when you're starting off. But I would say just for the rule of thumb for everybody is to keep the wire tight, don't have big gaps, and keep the angles the same and the spacing the same. And that right there will make your wiring aesthetically pleasing as well as functional. Okay. Now that's just kind of an overview for all wiring, but there is two different types of wiring. You have to do structural wiring first before you can do your secondary wiring. Okay, so your structural wiring is your trunk and your primary branches. Does anybody know what type of wire we're going to use on our structural wire?
Larger?
Larger. So it's going to be like 4, 6, 8, 10. Usually anything less than that is going to be secondary, unless it's like a really small tree, really thin branches. So your structural wire sets up your backbone for all your other wiring. Because your branches, your primary branches, here's your trunk, and then here's our primary branch coming out, okay? So your structural wiring, we have to start on a place of immobility, right? So where would I start on this tree to wire this trunk out? Does anybody know?
On the bottom.
On the bottom where?
Well, you stick the wire into the soil.
Okay, so this is our place of immobility right here, where the trunk and the tree, or the trunk and the soil meet, okay? So we stick our wire down in that soil at what angle? 60 to 65. So you keep that same angle all the way through. You're going to wire your tree just like that, okay? And then you're going to transfer from your trunk to your primary branch. So you always start your trunk down here at the soil. You never start your wiring like that. I've seen people do it many, many times. Never do that. Always start in the soil. Now, some people say, well, what if I don't have to wire my branch? What if my trunk? What if I just need to move my branches? That's fine. Then you just don't wire the trunk. You wire your primary branches. So say your trunk has already got all the movement in it needs, right? So you just wire your primary branches together. But you always have to wire two things together. Does that make sense to everybody? Do people get that? So even if our trunk's good, what we want to do is find another branch that's the similar size of our primary branch that we're wiring. So if we're going to wire our trunk, we'll wire our trunk into our branch. Okay? If we don't need to move our trunk and our trunk's good, we're going to wire our branch to our branch. Okay?
So if you're going the trunk, you're going to wire the trunk and then out on the branch.
Yes.
Do you have to come back down for the next branch, or how do you?
You always wire two things together, okay? So what you're going to do, we got two branches like this, right? I'm trying to make this as uncomplicated as possible.
Well, if you're wiring
There's a
your
lot of
trunk.
stuff. So,
You just go to the next branch.
yeah, you always just, you go to the branch that's equal size and close in
So you
proximity.
go up the trunk to the first branch, wire it, and then come back to the trunk and wire up to the next one.
Hold on. So, say we're wiring our trunk and our branch, okay? You start, when you wire, you want to keep your wire as straight as possible. So you have a nice, because you're always going to wire opposite ways, okay? So we're bringing our branch, like our wire up, okay? So our wire then would continue in this direction. Say we're moving this branch this way. We're wiring up the trunk and transferring it onto the branch. Two things always have to be wired together. You never just wire one thing. You never just wire your branch and think, oh, well, that's enough, I'm just moving out here. You wire the whole thing into something else. You have to have that anchor point. I've seen it done hundreds of times in workshops and stuff. People just, well, I'm not going to wire the trunk, I'm just going to wire this. You can't. You got to wire this to this, or if you're wiring your trunk, you got to wire your trunk to that. Does that make sense? Brian?
So what happens if you do like you say, you don't use the anchor? What's the consequence?
The consequence is you're going to usually break your branch. Or if you don't break your branch, it's not going to hold. So there's no sense in doing anything that there's no sense in wiring it. It's not going to stay in place.
Or as you're wrapping, it's just going to close to the wire right off.
Yeah. So you always got to wire two things together. I can't stress that enough.
In that picture, what would you do just to join those two branches?
So if I was just joining these two branches up, right? I try to make it easy. So you have your straight wire that you cut. Now, when you cut your wire, you want to make sure that you have enough wire to wire what you have here and here. So I would need double this, right? I would need enough for here, plus this, and then you always want to add like a third of that. So your wire would actually be probably that long. Does that make sense? So you would start in the middle, always continue the wire in the same direction. So you would start here, wrap around, and it also depends. I'm not going to get too technical with it because there's a lot of terms and stuff that we got to do, but if you're going to wire down, right, on structural wire, your wire has to cross the top. If you're going to wire up, your wire has to cross at the bottom of that branch. Is everybody getting confused now?
Sure. Does the clockwise or not,
That's also part of it. Hold on a second. So this right here is called our shoulder or our collar. So it's where your branch and your trunk meet. Okay? That's a 360-degree circle all the way around your tree or your branch. So depending on where we want to move these branches depends on how we're going to wire that tree. Does that make sense? So it's not like you can just wire it and then bend it whatever way you want. You have to have forethought. You have to go through. And something that I do well, I don't do it anymore, but what I started off doing is I bought pipe cleaners, like different colored pipe cleaners, and I would place those on the tree ahead of time to know how I'm going to wire that tree. And it gives you an idea, like you could say, blue is for going right, or red is for going left, or whatever you want to do. And then wire that up so you can know which way you're going to bend those branches. And then that'll help you decide how to wire your tree. Because there is a lot of forethought involved. You can't just wire it and then move it however you want. You have to envision what you're going to do with that branch ahead of time.
Rob, you talked about things that you should do. You might want to mention a couple things you shouldn't do when wiring, like crossing wires and things like that.
Everybody says crossing wires bad. To an extent it is, but a lot of times you have to cross wires.
Like on your tree there.
You want to try to stay away from it if possible, but there's going to be times where you're, like if you have bar branches or if you have certain things going on, there's going to be times where you're going to have to cross wires. There's no way to get away from it.
Like if you're going to, your tree there, if you're going to wire the whole trunk and then wire those two branches together, you could end up crossing if you didn't think about it.
Not necessarily. That's what I'm saying. You got to think about it ahead of time.
Right.
I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. You know what I mean? Because it's really in depth. There's a lot of things involved in it.
Yeah.
But Kenny's right. So you got to wire these two branches, you have to put this wire down at the soil in the right spot so it hits these branches in the right spot for you to wire those two branches together. So you guys see how much thought is put into wiring a tree? It's not like you just pull out your wire and you start going. You actually got to think of what pairs to what, which way you're moving it. So when you're thinking about wiring a tree and a branch, the one thing that you guys should all remember is it's opposite world. So if you're trying to go down, your wire's going to start at the top. If you're trying to go up, your wire's going to start at the bottom. If you're trying to go right, your wire comes in on the left-hand side. If you're trying to go left, it'll come in on the other side, on the right-hand side. Now I see a lot of confused looks. The reasoning for that, right? Wire hardens, right? That's how wire holds. So if your wire hardens, when you're pushing that branch down and it stretches that wire, and that stretching is going to harden that wire, right? So you're pulling down and you're stretching that wire. When it's hardened, your tree is not going to let it go back up. That wire is not going to let it go back up. Okay? Does that make sense? Does everybody kind of get that? That's why I was saying there's a lot of information involved in wiring.
Because what you're doing with the wires, you're pulling a branch down, you're making little breaks in bark and canopy. I mean, nothing, it's not going to rip if you do it right. But what you're doing is you're stretching basically the skin of the tree.
Right.
And then that will grow back. And once it's grown back, it's going to be resistant to coming up.
But in the meantime, when you wire down, in the meantime, this wire is what holds it in place. So just like with copper, the more you work it and stretch it, the harder it's going to get, right? So even with aluminum, it work hardens too, but not to the extent of copper. But same thing, you start at the bottom, you raise that branch up, and this wire stretches, okay? As soon as that wire stretches, it's not going to let that branch come back down. Everybody understand that? So it's opposite world when you're wiring your trees. The other thing you have to keep in mind is if you're wiring these two together, they're going to go in opposite directions. Because when you wire, one has to go one way and one has to go the other way. So when you're wiring, this is our straight piece of wire, okay? One side is going to go this way, the other wire side is going to go that way. I see everybody nodding, but did everybody get that? Okay. So if we wire these two together, right, we got to think about, we want this branch to go that way, we want it to go down, which way do we want it to go, right? So whatever, this is our primary branch, so this is our most important branch on the tree. So if we want that branch to go towards us and down, we want to come on the back side. Remember, this is 360 degrees. So we're going to come right here. That's where our wire is going to come in. And we want it to come towards us. So we're going to go this way. So if we're wiring clockwise, right, that's going to bring everything to the left. If we're wiring counterclockwise, that's going to bring everything to the right.
So I was thinking about it in terms of the opposite of that first kind of, that first starting curve. So on the left-hand side, that first starting curve is on the right, so that's where you're really pulling left. Kind of makes sense?
Yeah, so when you, like here, when you're pulling this wire around, right?
Yeah.
So this wire is going to come in from this side and come around this tree like that.
Right.
Okay? So we're pulling down and bringing it this way.
Towards
So
us.
when you guys bend your trees, you never want to just bend straight down. Don't do that, because that's going to really tear your branches. That's going to give you a lot more chance for it to rip or break or crack or for you to lose that branch. So whatever way your wire is going on that branch, when you're pulling down, you also want to kind of twist it. And that twisting motion will kind of help keep that all together. It'll still crack a little bit when you're doing this, but as long as it doesn't, like you don't see separation, like when you go to wire that, you see that cambium open up, stop. Okay? But if you just see like little cracks in your branch, that's fine. Just don't let it go further than that.
Are you twisting it the way, the direction
You
of the
twist it
rack?
in the same direction as the wire.
Okay.
So whichever way your wire's going, it's gonna, so we wanna go down and towards us, so we're gonna twist it like that. Same way as the wire.
And ideally, don't you, once you've got wire apart, you bend the wire, not so much the branch.
Right, right.
You can snap branch right there between the coils.
You can. You can. So I wish everybody would brought some trees that we could practice on, you know?
I thought about it.
Wiring car, I have a lot of branches.
Oh, every meeting, guys, if you guys want to bring trees in, bring trees in, by all means. Like, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you with the trees. So if you guys have stuff and you want to help get it wired, bring it in. But this is the idea. I mean, there's a lot more things in depth that you can do, but that's the idea of your wiring. Now that's just your structural wiring. Your secondary wiring is totally different. So your secondary wiring is going to be like your little fine branches. So structural wiring is mainly your trunk, right? And then your primary branches, the big fat guys, the ones that are coming right off of the trunk, okay? Now the ones that are coming off of the primary branches, like that, that's going to be our secondary wiring. But whatever our structural wiring does, it sets us up for what we're going to do with our secondary wiring. So what we want to do, say we have these two branches here coming out, right? Say we're going to wire this branch to that branch. Well, what we got to do is we got to make sure, remember we went clockwise. So we got to make sure that our secondary wire also starts clockwise. So we're going to bring it in and go clockwise on this branch. That would mean this branch is opposite. So we're going to go counterclockwise. Does that make sense to everybody?
Can you talk a little bit about how to avoid the seesaw thing?
Yeah, so the seesaw thing normally is, what she's referred to is if you guys have a branch, pretty much like a bar branch where there's a branch right across from one another, or see how we have a point here and a point here? If you have two branches that are within those 2 points, there's no anchor. So it's just like you're just wiring two things together with no anchor point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you want things to be close together, close-ish, but you don't want them to be within the same loop.
So what would I do at that tree I had at your last class where they were straight?
You would have to wire one branch to somewhere else,
Okay.
and that branch to somewhere else, if they're straight across from each other.
And does this then get into like a situation where you might not be able to avoid like crossing wires there?
Yeah, I mean, it's unsightly to cross wires. It kind of brings your eye to it. So what you try to do if you have to cross a wire, if this is our front, right, cross the wire on the back side of the branch so you don't see it. Okay? Just a simple way to do it.
Now, when you go from the left branch to the right branch, when you cross over the trunk, you just like push it around the other side. You don't wrap the trunk.
Yeah, you do. You have to follow. Like I say, the structural wire is the backbone for our secondary wiring. So you have to follow that structural wiring with our secondary wiring. Does that,
Is there like a minimum or a maximum amount of time you want to go around the trunk between one side?
Kind of depends on how far your branch is.
Yeah. So if you have a branch here, a branch here, I mean, you're going to have to go every turn that the same as you got into your structural wire. You have to follow those turns.
Okay.
Well, like you just said, you want at least one revolution.
Right.
as
1.5.
an anchor. 1.5. Okay.
You want to have at least 1.5 revolutions to get that anchor.
Gotcha.
Okay. Is everybody super confused now?
That's actually
The
making more sense.
secondary wire lays right next to the structural
Yeah,
wire.
you want to follow that structural
So there
wire.
doesn't need to be, you don't want to really go a gap between the wires, right?
I mean, it doesn't have to be like right on it, but it looks better if it looks as one piece, right? So if you can keep it kind of up to follow that structural wire, it makes it look like there's less wire on the tree. The other thing that happens that you don't want to do, guys, is when you're doing your structural wire, or your secondary wire. So now, as you can see, we have our structural wire here, and then we also have another wire, which is our secondary wire. We don't want to have more than 3 pieces of wire in that one spot because it's just too clunky. So we could wire one more piece going out this way, and then we'd have to switch up to another branch. So you could have one more wire coming off of another tree past this one. So you'd have 1, 2, 3 wires, but then you'd have to switch to another branch to start another piece of wire. Does that make sense?
Hey Rob, if you have too many wires in that one spot, like you were saying, does that make it develop wire scars faster?
Not necessarily. Another thing that's on the wire scar part is if you're doing junipers or pines, a lot of times you want those wire scars to set a little bit. You want to have a little bit of an indent because it sets that branch for you. It helps hold that branch in place. Now, on the opposite side, if you have a beech or a maple or something with nice smooth bark, you want to get that wire off there before there's any wire scars at all, because you're never going to get rid of that scar. So you just got to be diligent and come out and check it and make sure it's not digging in. And if it is, pull it off of there, and you can rewire it. But whatever you do, don't put that wire back in that wire scar. Put it, next to it, or go. A lot of people say don't go the opposite way, but you can go the opposite way if you're you don't want to have like crisscrossing wire scars on the tree. That's like even worse than having one wire scar. So you just got to be careful when you're wiring that you're always checking to make sure there's no wire scars on deciduous trees.
And kind of in the same vein, to avoid per deciduous, especially with the smoother bark, what would be the seasonality and then the duration of time you're leaving that wire on?
There's no right or wrong answer for that. It just depends on the tree, how fast it grows. I can't give you like a 5-week answer or anything like that. It's just, you got to always just check your tree, make sure it's not digging in.
But I think in general, I mean, from all my studies, evergreens, conifers, pines, it's typically on a much longer period than with deciduous.
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah.
It can be on as long as a year.
But
pines
again,
and
with evergreens,
mm-hmm.
again, with evergreens, that wire scar sometimes even gives you that more movement in your tree. And again, once it starts to bark up, you get that gnarly bark on there, you're never going to see those wire scars anyway. So, unless it's like halfway through your tree, But wire scars on a white pine or a black pine or a juniper, they don't really even matter. All right. Any questions about that?
Well, about that, I didn't want, is there an advantage or disadvantage of using 2 4s or an 8 on your structural wire?
Well, some people can't use 4 or 6 because it's so heavy, So the one thing that I would tell you guys about when you're doing your wiring, remember how I told you that whatever length you cut off to give yourself a third more? So when you're wiring, especially structural wire, you're wiring that, you want to have a long piece of wire. You're not wiring right up on that trunk. You're not bending the wire like this right up on the trunk. You're using this as leverage to help you put that wire on. There's 2 different thoughts on that. One is because if you use 2 pieces of wire, you're already down to only putting 1 more wire on there for that 3 rule that we have, right? So if you can use the bigger wire when you need it, I would do that.
Okay.
But if you can't, because some people can't move 4-gauge wire. It's heavy. Like that stuff I sent around is 6-gauge, and that's really hard to move.
Well, you mentioned your path to the square.
Yeah, I'm trying not to put too much out there, just confuse people. You know what I mean?
And my other question, this is a beginner question. So do you wire it once, and then you take it off and then it's done?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So it's, well, I mean, it's dependent on you. Like, if you think that's how you like your tree and you're not gonna wire it anymore, then by all means, it's your tree, you don't have to wire it anymore.
But generally, you're
But
thinking of it in a
normally-
longer time frame.
Yeah, it's always a process. You're not gonna be able, say we wanna put this, say this is a black pine, and we wanna put all kinds of twists and turns in this trunk. Well, it's pretty straight, right? So we're not gonna be able to put a bunch of twists and turns in one time, so we gotta do it incrementally,
Yeah, okay.
you know?
Thank you. That's helpful.
And again, you got, when you're taking the wire off, guys, don't, please, do not unloop it. I know people try to save wire, save money by unlooping their wires. Don't do that. You're gonna end up tearing up your branches and knocking buds off, and it's just, it's gonna be harder for everybody if you try to unloop things. Just take it, and like we were talking, how wherever there's a loop, so we got a loop here, a loop here, a loop here, just take your wire cutters and cut in that same spot, and it pretty much just falls off. And you're not gonna hurt your tree, you're not gonna bend branches and break branches. I've seen more people destroy the tree more by taking the wire off than putting the wire on. Does that make sense? Any questions about any of this? There's a lot more to wiring, but I'm just trying to give you guys the bare bones of it, you know? Because I could talk about this for like 4 hours. There's so much involved in wiring.
Mine's nitty-gritty, I'll catch you later.
Huh?
My question is trivial, I'll catch you later.
Oh, good.
Well, I'm horrible. If you had this branch coming up like this, you wanted to bend it down into the position, I am really good at splitting it right there. How much of that is just not getting at the right point at the top to support it?
Well, one is probably not the right point. Two, you're probably not using your offhand to hold it and to support it. And instead of just going straight down, like I said, you want to twist it and bend at the same time. I mean, there's all kinds of...
Well, when you mentioned twist before, that was the first thing that kind of came up in my head.
And the other thing you can do, guys, if you don't want to wire this whole tree out and you're just trying to move things in one direction, right? You're just trying to move branches down, you can also do guy wiring. And guy wiring is you use wire less than this, put some plastic or rubber or something on top of your tree so you don't scar it. Wrap this around the top, or you can wrap it around the root at the bottom and pull it up to where your rubber is, and then twist it. And then it's easier with two people, but you can do it with one person. So as you're pulling down and pulling your branch down, you twist your wire at the same time, and it'll hold that branch in place. Now you're not going to get your side-to-side movement and your different bends, but you'll get that branch to come down. So that's a helpful way, and you can even do both. You can wire it, and if you need extra help holding that thing in place, you can guy wire it down too. Any other questions? I hope to see you guys at some of my wiring workshops. Like it's a tough thing. It's really an in-depth kind of thing to learn.
Excellent workshop.
I've wired, I don't know how many trees in the past years, and like I said, I'm still not a master or anything at it, but I can wire a tree pretty good. But it's really hard to do. To do well, I should say. I'm not trying to scare people, but if you can go by those couple rules, it'll really help you out. And you know, by all means, if you mess up, redo it. Try it again. Like don't say, oh, I've spent $5 on this tree, I don't want to rewire it, and make it look as good as you can make it look. You know?
Yeah, Rob. So you've talked a lot about why wiring is difficult. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of it and why it's worth putting the time in to learn it, as opposed to like only using clip and grow or?
All right. Well, I said at the beginning, kind of, that wiring is our tool. You know, wiring is what we do to correct our tree's movements. There's only a few things that we can do for bonsais. We can take branches away, or we can change the movement of the tree. There's really not much else we can do unless you learn how to graft, you know.
And isn't some of the reason that you want to move branches is if they need more sunlight to open it up so that the trees help you?
Yeah, so like when you're doing your structural wiring, guys, your trunk and your branch, that's where you're going to put most of your movements in. That's where you're going to make it look interesting and unique. That's what you want to get that line of your tree, okay? When you get out to your secondary branching, that's more of your placement of your pads. Or have you guys, you know what I'm talking about, like the juniper pads where you see like the clouds? That's where you want to kind of place your pads and produce the most prominent, like to treat the more sunlight. You want to move things in a manner which gives you that full canopy, and then also so each branch is not shaded out or and becomes part of your overall aesthetic.
I get, Sue, and I don't know how to answer it. I get questions from people. Why are you wiring it? Why are you not just letting nature take its course like it does out in the wild?
Well, I mean, then it's not really bonsai, right?
Well,
Then it's just like a tree grow.
It's just it's a shrub in a pot.
Yeah.
I mean, bonsai to me is your imagination being, it's just like drawing something. It's your imagination being put to something that's not supposed to be like that. Like you're trying to bend this tree to your will of what you envision it to be. Right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I tell them when they throw it.
Yeah.
Just let it grow, just let nature do it. Like that.
Any other questions? I hope you guys start wiring your trees. I'd like to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The Bonsai Time podcast has been produced by Kevin Ferris, Ryan Houston, and Kelly Louie. Find more information, relevant pictures, and links for each episode in the episode description and in our show notes at www.BonsaiTimePodcast.com. To support us in creating more episodes, please remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. To go the extra mile, reach out if you'd like to consider sponsoring an episode. To submit questions for future Bonsai Brainstorm episodes or any other suggestions or feedback, reach out to us on social media, through our website, or at BonsaiTimePodcast@gmail.com. We are Bonsai Time Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all podcast apps, and at Bonsai Time Pod on TikTok. Lastly, find your hosts at the links in the description or on Instagram at Kevin_Ferris Bonsai, Bonsai with Kelly, and Ryan is at InVivo Bonsai everywhere or www.invivobonsai.com. Thanks for listening.